So in this video, we're going to go through the features of the low shock and the OEM travel shock. There's some extra bits with the low shock that we'll need to clear up. But let's get started with the adjustments. So on both the OEM and the low shock, we have compression and rebound damping. It's a combined 20% rebound, 80% compression, and it's adjustable via this clicker on the shock. And once it's mounted in the bike, this allows you to access the clicker without having to remove the shock from the bike. We also have the preload ring mounted to the bottom as well as the top of the shock. So normally this would be fixed and you would have to take the shock out of your bike and adjust the preload on this side. But we've allowed the ring on the bottom that's running on a bearing to be adjusted. So when this is in your bike, you can simply undo the grub screw and then adjust your preload to where you want and do the grub screw back up. Now, something that's very crucial is that we set the preload ring at the lowest setting, which is flush with the shock body. When you are adjusting with this ring, you are simply increasing your preload to compensate for any luggage that you have on the bike. Do not wind this any further out past the rim of the shock body, otherwise you'll be losing thread engagement and this can be dangerous. So if you do need to reduce the preload on your shock, you will have to remove the shock from the bike and adjust it from this side. So moving over to the low shock, the additional feature is that you have the adjustable eyelet. So for the standard, for the X, this shock is a -20 in its OEM setting. That's -20 millimeters seat height. And if you screw the eyelet in all the way, that then becomes a -50 seat height. This is simply done by a locking nut. So you can break off the locking nut and then screw this eyelet in and then tighten up the locking nut, and that will set your height of your seat. There is an indicator on the thread of the eyelet, which is a small divot like a center punch mark. Do not unwind the eyelet past this center punch mark. It needs to be visible just at the point of the locking nut here. Any further and again you're losing that thread engagement, which then becomes dangerous. For the speed, this shock will be OEM to -30 millimeters. So it's the same shock unit, but depending on whether you have the X or the speed, the seat height changes. So again, the X is -20 to -50 seat height. For the speed, it's OEM to -30 mil seat height. So here we can see that you can adjust your preload using this ring. You can adjust your compression and rebound using this clicker whilst in the bike. And then when you're setting the height of your low shock, you can simply pop the shock bolt out, and you can lift the rear shock out, make the adjustment on the length, pop the shock back in and put the bolt through, and then just test how that feels in the bike before doing up the lock nut. This example is the OEM travel shock, so it doesn't have the locking nut on the bottom, but the principle is the same. So you're lifting the shock out, adjusting the eyelet, popping the shock back in, sit on it, have a feel, and then once you're ready, do this bolt up and then secure your locking nut at the end.